Hello friends, I'm Chromatic and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, as you see, I'm drawing a cute little piglet and we just hopping right into it. I used my kneaded eraser to pick up all the extra graphite from my pencil markings, and then I just dove straight in with this pink color. I mixed a little bit of purple in with red to give a nice pinky color, and obviously there was a lot of water in this, so it wasn't too pigmented. And I just went straight in for my darker areas. I knew I wanted the ears to be a really bright and more of a vibrant pink. I mean, bright for watercolor, not like a full saturation of color, but really bright. So I marked out my ears and the nose first because I knew I wanted them to dry before I added on more layers of lighter shades of pink. So I did that, and then I started coloring in the body, and I wet the whole body area, and then I mixed the pink, I mixed my pinky purpley color with a bit of brown, and I was just tweaking the color as I went, but I started basically shading where the piglet had shading on it. I had a little reference photo and I went a little bit stray of it, but I basically used a reference photo for this whole thing. Just to help me with my shading and everything. After that, I used that color that I used for the shading to just start adding a little bit of detail around the face and around the nose and the chin. Now, I didn't wet the whole face at this point. I just started adding a little bit of shading. I didn't mind if there was going to be a little bit of harsher lines from this. That's what I wanted. I wanted this to be able to dry a little bit so that I can go back in with more and more layers of dimension afterwards. So that's why for around the eye you don't see it bleeding as you did with the chest of the piglet. You can see it bleeding a little bit more. And then as the paper dries a little bit more and more, I can go back in with a little bit more purpley tones and a little bit more depth that isn't going to run across the whole front of the piglet. And I just add water as needed. And I have found that adding a lot of water on the paper really is the key to watercolor. Who would have thunk? The name of the thing is just how it works. Watercolor. You add water and it makes it work. I don't know why it's such a challenge for me, but I really liked how this turned out. It was really simple for me. I really wanted to keep this simple, not too hard for myself. I didn't want to go overboard like I tend to do, especially with watercolor, and I think I was way more successful with this painting than I have been on any of the other paintings I've done so far. So I just added details and shading, and each pass I let it dry a little bit more, and then I went in to add a little bit more depth on top of the drier sections as I let other sections dry. And sometimes I would let the whole thing fully dry, but basically I just started adding a wash. And once those underlayers are dry, and then you go in to add that wash of like a lighter pink, like right here is the same sort of mixture of the brownish pinky purple, and I just layered on top of all those dry sections. And it's okay if the page gets pretty wet because the parts that have dried already aren't as easy to dissolve and move about the paper. Since they are dried into the paper, it would take a lot more to rinse that out. So I just keep adding a little bit more depth and a little bit more detail. I know I'm gonna go back into this with some felt tip marker. I think I just used one felt tip marker, and I'm gonna go in with gouache. So I know I didn't need to add it too much, but I wanted to get all my base shading and coloring down. I wasn't gonna add any more color. And then, even then, I went in with black still, just to add a tiny bit more detail and to just add some really much deeper depth where there is just pure black in the image. So for the nostrils, and I'm sure I will add black for the eyes too. Oh, as I just did. After I was done all of my initial layers of shading and everything on the piglet, I wanted to get a little bit of a background going with this one. I wanted something that would contrast the purple and pinky hues, but I didn't want to just use what's the opposite of red, which is pink, more saturated. The opposite of red would be green, but I didn't want to use green as a background, especially after what happened with that tiger. But I just wanted to keep it really light the Piglet's really light, and I wanted it to go, and I know the opposite of purple is yellow, and I thought it would be super cute to do a nice light yellow background. So basically I started off with wetting the entire background, including between underneath the legs. I just wet everything, and it didn't stay super wet. Obviously it was a really large section to wet down, but that initial layer of moisture helped me avoid really harsh lines. And basically I did one solid, like, pretty pigmented line at the top, and then I kept adding water as I blended downward with my brush pointing downward on the paper. And I just kept blending downward. If there were spots where I felt like I needed a little bit more pigment, I added just a little bit more, but I didn't add too much more than that initial first line. And since I wanted it to be really light and really pastel, that was more than enough through the whole paper. If anything, it might even be a little bit too yellow, but I didn't want it to be just one flat wash. I wanted it to be a gradient. And I really like how the yellow kind of plays off the purpliness of the pig, and it really helps it stand out more. I might have gone in with another layer or two on the chest. I'm not sure. It looks like it got a little darker there, but basically I got it to how I liked it, and then I went in with the gouache first. Now what I did, I highlighted around the nose, the top of it, and underneath the nostril-y kind of area where it has a ridge. And then I did highlights in terms of hair strokes. Little piglets are so cute, they're really fluffy, and this one was kind of like in sunlight. There was sun behind it. What's that called? I think it's called backlit. So you could see a lot of white hairs hanging off the sides of the ear, and I just thought it was super cute. You could really see how bright and light and fluffy these little guys were. There was a few piglets in the photo. I just took one of them. So basically I just did hair strokes all over. I didn't overdo it. Well, I tried not to overdo it, but I put hair strokes basically wherever they were in the reference, and then where they weren't, I only added a little bit just to add that texture into my painting. I wanted to make sure the piglet looked lifelike. I added like its little eyebrow hairs, and I just wanted to give it that detail. And let me tell you, gouache works so much better on top of watercolor. Again, who'd have thunk? It works better on watercolor than it does on colored pencil, because if you're putting it on top of colored pencil, it'll turn gray. Well, I put it on top of black colored pencil. It mixes with it, but it doesn't mix with the watercolor, and it just works so good with watercolor, which is why it's sort of a watercolor medium, I guess, so it's to be expected. But I feel like adding these white little hairs really helped lighten up the drawing, and it made the piglet just look super cute. After I let the gouache dry, the last step was the Micron felt tip markers in black, and the first thing I did was I filled in all the really pure black places. So around the whites of the eyes, I filled in the eyeball. I don't know if having the watercolor background even really helped that much, but it made me feel better as I finished my watercolor and gouache section to see that like little bit of depth there. So I filled in the eyeballs, and I filled in the really dark depths of the nostrils because they were really black too. And those were the only pure black sections in the whole drawing, and that's when I went in, I think, with a skinnier marker for the more detailed areas. And I added little outlines around the creases where there's like little creases around the eyes and the nose. I added a little bit of outline there, and then I start adding a little bit of sort of line work, just like the hair strokes with the white, but not quite all over. The white was super easy to layer on top of the watercolor and just give a nice fluffy effect to the fur, but I didn't want to make the whole piglet just look really dark. So what I did with this thinner marker is I outlined the whole piggy. I outlined each little hair so that you could see its little white fuzzy hair on the outer edge of the ear, and I just like an outline. I feel like we've established this before. So I outlined the whole thing, not in like a solid, straight, like super precise outline, more of like a sketchy outline. Every single stroke was like a really small short stroke, just like dashing around the perimeter of the whole thing. And then even where I was adding a little bit more depth, where there was a little bit of shadow in between the hair, I added a little bit, like just little ticks, little not really pieces of fur because the fur wasn't dark, but little shadows that is between the fur. So I wasn't trying to like aim for the white sections, I was trying to aim between those white sections and add shadow with a little bit of this dark black like fine tip marker. And basically I just outlined every section, like every little fluffy edge of the hair and the ear, and then the top of the head, around the whole body, and just around the shadows and the perimeter of the face and the chest, just to add that depth and dimension. And I feel like that really solidifies the drawing and makes it a little bit less ambiguous. It makes it so cute. I think this little piggy is so cute. It's just my cutest little drawing I've done so far, I feel like. I mean, who am I kidding? All these dogs and stuff I've drawn, they're all so adorable too. Whenever I draw eyeballs, I'm like whenever I finish and add those little highlights in the eyes, I'm like, oh my god, this is so cute. And it's just like a disembodied eyeball, and I'm like, maybe I'll focus on the rest of the drawing now. But basically, I think this little piggy is so cute, and I'm gonna start uploading some of my stuff for sale on Etsy. I'm gonna put them for sale as digital prints, so definitely keep a lookout in my next few videos for when I post a link for that. I just gotta get some pictures taken so that I can put them in as digital files. And if you ever want physical prints, just let me know and I can definitely work on that for you. But digital prints are definitely the way I'm gonna go for now. Anyway, I haven't even been talking about the drawing. Let me know what you think of this. I think it's so cute. Let me know in the comments what you think. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to check out some of my other videos, my other explorations in watercolor. And also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Chromatic Sauce. It's linked in the description if you ever need to find it. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!